G'day and thanks for joining me, Jo Starling, as I take a philosophical look at fishing and what's in it for chicks. So lads and lasses, girls and boys, if you actually don't fish, sit back, because I'm going to blow your eyebrows back. You see, there's a side to fishing that you probably don't know about. You don't get to see it on TV or in the magazines. It's the backstory that I want to explore with you today. See, from the outside looking in, fishing may look like there's nothing more to it than guts and gore, gizzards, glory, stinky bait and boorish blokes. But as a woman, you might choose to see things a little bit differently. Fishing brings with it inspiration. I'm an artist, and there's nothing that has inspired me more to paint in life than the moments that I've experienced while I've been out on the water. Fishing changed my life. It enhances love. Fishing teaches self-reliance, and it brings empowerment. Female anglers have been part of the global fishing scene for, forever. Here you can see the first ever book written on angling, and it was by a lady called Dame Juliana Berners. She was born in the late 1300s, and this book was written in the early 1400s. This example that's on screen was published in somewhere around 1830. It's got fantastic tips all the way through it, such as how to make a fishing hook out of a darning needle. It's that bent needle that is what she named the angle, and that's where we get our title of anglers from. Pretty cool, right? Well, over the last, couple of decades or so, we've witnessed a rise in the number of women participating at the peak level of this sport. They're high profile, highly successful, and highly approachable. Now, naturally, being chicks, we network, so I've asked a cross-section of them to share some of their thoughts about why they're so passionate about fishing, and I want to introduce them to you now. Vicki Lear is a successful property management business owner from Wollongong, a mad keen angler like myself, chasing anything with fins with any rod available to her. Rocky Edwards is a radio producer and barra tournament angler from Darwin, and my longest standing friend in this group of women. Roberta Pearce, a retiree from Forster who has to choose fishing destinations near wineries and galleries because hubby doesn't fish. I love that flip. Kristina Royter, Victorian founder of She Loves It Outdoors and recent immigrant to New Zealand. That's a great loss for us Aussies. And Laurence, Sydney-based events professional and game fishing guru. I'll chat about the key benefits that came out of our musings over this topic, and at the same time, the girls will share their thoughts with you on the screen. So let's go. After chatting with these wonderful women to find insights into why they love fishing so much, and mixing that with my some 40 plus years of being a chick, I've looked at my life experiences and our conversations and come down to 5 basic yearnings that women long for in life, that we prize. They are friendship, love, personal growth, adventure, and well-being. And that, folks, basically describes the backstory that I spoke to you about earlier. So friendship, let's talk about friendship. How does fishing improve a girl's friendships? Well, probably the easiest example I can bring to that is to tell you how I got into fishing. So, with a little bit of history, I guess I'd gone fishing about 20 times as a, youngster, from the age of 5 to my early 30s, and then my sisters-in-law invited me to fish with them, which ultimately turned into Team Sister Act. I was a blinkered corporate chick in Adelaide at the time. Fishing with the girls changed everything. Girls understand how to communicate to girls, so I didn't need to cross that Mars-Venus divide in order to learn. With that barrier gone, I learned very quickly and fell under fishing's spell. Being in a car and on a boat for vast periods of time with the girls realigned my interpersonal skills. It dislodged me from the utilitarian mindset of corporate relationships, where I'd been stuck for over a decade. It taught me the importance of small talk and knowing when it's time that you can talk about work and when you've just got to leave that stuff behind. I guess what I'm saying is it was fishing that taught me how to be a girlfriend. And there's a special bond that forms when you share fishing skills. I've never struck the peculiar, almost intimate bond that builds quickly between my mentee and myself when I'm teaching fishing skills. It's astounding how many people still come up years later in person or find me on Facebook to share a success. I know where they're coming from. Whenever I'm fishing, still to this day, my mentors, especially my sisters, come with me. It's like they're in my head. Every skill I'm using activates the voice of those wise ones who passed it on to me. Tying a particular knot can be like hearing a song from the 80s. My mind races straight back to where I was, the sights, the smells, the people. I've been pondering on this kind of magical bond while I worked on this topic for you all, and I realised that it's absolutely intimate in a very platonic way. Looking at teaching a knot, for example, it's so small, isn't it? And to see what's going on, we have to get right in there and talk about it. While we're doing that, our arms are probably going to interlock. Our hands will touch. We'll look at each other in really close quarters. We'll share one another's exhaled carbon dioxide. We don't even realise the proximity and the intimacy that we're dealing with. We're that focused on what we're working on. And this happens when you're teaching casting, working a lure, or any of the other skills required. And somewhere in those myopic moments, this magical bond is formed, and it seems that it lasts forever. And that's just the small stuff. Fishing is actually a team sport for the most part. It's only occasionally that you go out fishing alone. More often, there's a group of you, and you all have a role in each capture. Good boat control and landing net skills are vital. Failure in either of these can result in losing a fish just as easily as poor angling skills. So imagine what it's like when you all work together to land a quality fish. Or even better, perhaps it's someone's first ever fish. Back in the day, it wasn't unusual for our boat to create waves in more ways than one, usually because one of us had landed a big barra and we were all jumping around and hugging one another. They were the days. Alright, let's look at number 2, relationships. It's not just friendships that benefit in the fishing arena. By simply following my own path and immersing myself in my newfound love of all things fishing led me to meet Steve, the love of my life. Many of you will know that ours has become the fairy tale of the modern Australian fishing world, although to be truthful, I was the fishing frog who got turned into a princess. But before I met Steve, I was raising a princess of my own, and I've always used fishing as a means for teaching independence, engagement, and a love of the outdoors. Charlotte and I used to have casting competitions in our front yard every morning before school, long before I met Steve. We used to bait fish and picnic off the wharf in Darwin with a stereo and a blanket, go and get ourselves some takeaway, sit down and float a bait out and hope to catch something. We never did, but we thoroughly enjoyed the exercise of learning together. Now as a family we'll hike for miles observing nature and talking about symbiosis, cause and effect, ecosystems and biology. Sometimes we even just talk about stuff, and this is really important to us. You see, Steve and I both work from home, so computers and technology and our work always muscles in on our lives. They interrupt and permeate everything. But when we go fishing, either as a couple or as a family, technology has to take the back seat, and our relationships genuinely get to flourish. I mentioned earlier about how much time I would spend in the car with my girlfriends or on the boat. Well, obviously this comes into play with your family as well. When you go fishing with your partner and or your kids, it's like you enter a bubble where it's just you floating through this mad world of ours for a while, sharing the experience, and the time seems to draw the focus in to just your group. It's really difficult to explain, but it really does accentuate your quality time together. Fishing together, whether with your mates or in a family group, works out your cooperation skills, your time sharing skills, and even your communication and conflict resolution skills. Now, I know I'm giving fishing a glowing report card, but I hope you weren't expecting me to say that fishing doesn't cause conflict. Because any activity that inspires competition and yet requires cooperation in a confined space will experience friction at times. The thing is, if you're on a boat, you kind of have to sort it out, don't you? Unless you're a strong swimmer or someone who's happy to sit in a sulk all day. Anyway, I'm not alone in valuing fishing in this way. You can see from the girls' comments that fishing has enhanced their family bonds as well. I love Roberta's comments about her dad. He passed his love of fishing on to her, and while she loves the sport for its own sake, she cherishes it as a part of her ongoing relationship with her late father. It's like fishing maintains her connection with the man she idolised. Which brings us back to that magical bond that I spoke to you about that is created between people who share the fishing journey closely. That's pretty powerful, no matter what relationship you're talking. Right, let's talk about personal development. I bet you this one surprised you when I put it up in the first place. But fishing is a very wise mentor. The skills and attributes I've developed as I've been working to improve my angling fortunes are applicable and relevant in my everyday life, and they definitely bolt on to build a better form of me. Learning to fly cast first alerted me to the self-development aspects of fishing. I found my first lesson in fly casting completely confounding. To be honest, I wanted to snap that freaking rod over my knee. Fortunately, I had a skill set up my sleeve that I was able to draw upon. As an ex-martial artist, I know physical power comes from technique, not strength. So when my line was wafting around like some gymnast ribbon at the Olympics, rather than shooting out like the chameleon tongue I was aiming for, I knew I was just not getting my action right. I sat down and I watched. I replayed the instructions and I looked at the technique of those who were getting it right and those of us who weren't. That worked. And now, fly fishing is my favourite form, even though I'm still only a middle belt. While fly fishing is a very exaggerated example of fishing as a life coach, all forms of fishing will prove great teachers. Fishing teaches us empathy and invites us to wonder at diversity. If you can imagine an intergalactic rift, raising a fish out of the water is like reaching through that rift and briefly bringing back an alien species that's evolved to survive in a completely different environment to our own. Each encounter, if you allow respect to form part of your fishing ethos, is incredible and a privilege. And you never grow tired of it. It never becomes old, because like any sport, you are always trying to better your own best. You'll hear fishers talking about their PBs, just like any athlete. But we're a hungry bunch. We don't just remember our biggest fish, we remember our biggest fish of any particular species, and we constantly try to improve on it. And then we'll start a new set of stats on, say, different tackle, fly, for example. Fishing teaches you that the only person worth besting in life is you. You'll see the cycle of life play out in front of you and learn just how fragile the environment is. You'll develop an incredible sense of custodianship and responsibility. I meet very few passionate anglers who aren't conservationists and environmentalists. If the Greens would stop trying to shut us out of our fishing zones and work with us instead, they'd soon realise that we're all on the same team and that recreational anglers are their best allies in conserving our waterways. Oh, sorry, I got up on my soapbox again. Let's get back on track. One of the perennial buzzwords for women is empowerment. Well, I've never been more empowered than when I truly attained self-sufficiency in my fishing. Now I'm talking to you as a woman with some serious credentials. I have a State Telstra Business Women's Award, Telstra Micro Business Award. I'm twice Small Business Champion State Entrepreneur. And despite that, my sense of empowerment comes from being self-sufficient in life. Not what I can earn or not how many people I can successfully command in a business. I can back a trailer better than most blokes I know. Don't laugh, I can. And I can launch my own boat. I can go fishing on my own. I can catch my own fish, kill, gut and fillet it, cook it up and serve a delicious meal to my daughter. I've got a veggie patch in the backyard and absolutely love the idea of subsistence living. As long as the fish aren't toxic in a post-apocalyptic world, I know that I can provide for my daughter. That's empowerment. I'm here to tell you that it's not about being better than blokes. It's about being capable, confident, and in control of your circumstances. And it's about rising to the moment. Let's talk holidays. Every girl loves to travel, right? Well, fishing is a great compass, especially if you have a fishing partner. Choosing destinations based on a common interest is so much better than compromising. Now, I've wet a line in New Zealand, Indonesia, the Maldives, the Cook Islands, Timor-Leste, and every state in Australia, including many of our idyllic islands. I'm also hoping that fishing will take me to some of my aspirational destinations as well. I'm thinking trout in the Dolomites, pike fishing in Ireland, salmon in Canada, Marcia fishing in Thailand would be cool. Oh, tarpon in Florida, sight casting to those monsters with fly, and the list goes on. Steve and I went to the Cook Islands for our honeymoon. We went to Aitutaki chasing bonefish. Neither of us got one, which means I've never caught one. So I should go back, right? In fact, if I go back and I get a bonefish, then that's great, but I need to go back again, don't I, to improve on my PB. Better make a note to Steve. But one of the greatest bonuses of fishing for me has been falling in love with the Australian landscape for myself. Not inheriting it or drooling over it through someone else's pictures in magazines or on slideshows, but actually being there. It happens to me nearly everywhere I go. It's kind of like a landscape reveal. With fishing being somewhat myopic, when you're truly in the moment, it's really awe-inspiring to lift your eyes from the water and realise where you've drifted to. Following your fishing compass will lob you in some of the most spectacular locations. And fishing abroad can take on a different meaning as well. In Asia, we found that our catch in tournaments has been destined for the local village. We've returned home to heroes' welcome, with villagers following our boats down the beaches and cheering. I confess that one of my personal development learning curves has been accepting that my incredibly first world catch and release mindset has little place in less fortunate countries. I've always believed in honouring any catch I choose to take home, and I will take some fish home for my table. But I value a swimming fish much more highly. The satisfaction of watching that swim away healthily after being cared for properly so that it's there to be caught again just thrills me. But fishing overseas exposed just how privileged I am to be able to think like that. Once, when I instinctively released a beautiful big-eye trevally, it was the first one I'd ever caught, and it was over in Sumba. We did our normal thing where we held it up for the cameras and got the photos for the magazines, etc., and then I speared it back into the water and released it. I overheard a shocked Indonesian crew member remark incredulously, "Orang kaya." Now, he wasn't to know that having grown up in the Northern Territory, Indonesian is my second language. But what he said was rich people, and he just expressed his exasperation that I might just throw food away like that. His disbelief rocked my paradigms. It was a real aha moment for me, and it was very humbling. I felt awful. Letting my fishing be my guide has shown me some of the most spectacular sights I've ever seen. Now, I'm not a walker, really, not by any stretch of the imagination. I've never been into hiking, yet I'll walk 20 plus k's in a day on a trout stream in New Zealand between those towering snow-capped peaks, amongst chest-high tussocks, following the footsteps of the hobbits. I'll spend hours barefoot on a secluded beach, or I'll scale boulders up a forest river to get to untouched waters. And all along the way, there are roses to be smelled, which kind of leads nicely to our last point, well-being. Every single fisher I know uses fishing to manage their well-being, whether it's just an excuse to go outside and reconnect with nature, or a more serious salve for stress or depression. The social benefits of fishing are astounding. Fishing provides me with Zen-like meditation space. There's Tai Chi-like focus if you're fly fishing. It provides peace and it provides serotonin and adrenaline at the same time. That's a complete package, right? There have been studies done on this. It's been proven that fishing is beneficial for helping to curb behavioural problems in wayward youth. And it bridges the gap between generations. Did you know that the physical action of fly casting is proven to be beneficial for ladies after mastectomy to help ward off lymphedema? Casting for Recovery is a now global organisation that originated in Montana decades ago, running fly casting residential clinics for women recovering from breast cancer, using the sport to foster camaraderie, fitness and well-being. And that links us back to where we started. Women network no matter what we do. The Australian women's fishing scene is a phenomenal network of inspiring women who celebrate each other's growth and achievements as it happens. Our common passion for all that fishing really is bonds us and provides fodder for robust conversations, group getaways and much laughter. So, when it comes to fishing, what's in it for chicks? Well, I think fishing is the complete package. There's no gender bias. In fact, I think it favours us most. An imaginative, empathic and intelligent fisher will outfish brute strength every time. Plus, patience is an enormous virtue. Fishing offers peace and excitement in one outing. It provides the opportunity for genuine bonding and quality time with the people who mean the most to us. I just wish I'd realised all of this sooner. I hope I've helped you think differently about fishing and maybe consider getting out with those you love and wetting a line. If you want to know anything further or connect with any of the wonderful women that you've seen on screen today, here's a list of our contact details. Get in touch and let's get you out on the water. It's totally empowering.